If you want to communicate with someone on the other side of the world, it's relatively easy. You simply pick up the phone and talk to them via satellite instantaneously. However, if you lived in Adelaide, South Australia back in 1870, it might take you more than 3 months to communicate with someone in, say, London, because you had to send a letter via ship. And then, between 1870 and 1872, something remarkable happened here in Australia. They built the overland telegraph line between Darwin and Adelaide. It consisted of 36,000 wooden poles with wires stretched between them and 12 repeater stations. This one is the middle station in Alice Springs. And because of these, it was now possible to send Morse code messages from Adelaide to Darwin and then to the rest of the world in just a few hours. Morse code, as you probably know, consists of a series of long and short taps, dashes and dots. And by this means you can send words or numbers anywhere you like, as long as you have a wire to send them along electrically. That little buzzer in there brings messages into the Alice Springs telegraph station. And the idea of the curved wooden box is to amplify that sound so that if the operator's sitting here and dozing off, it wakes him up. His job is to send that message exactly down the wire to the next repeating station. Because you see, as a message passes along a wire, it tends to get weaker. That was why they had repeating stations, so that an operator could regenerate that message, start it again afresh, so that a strong message now goes along to the next repeating station. And this service was offered 24 hours a day. Now, the station master was responsible for making sure that all of the telegraph operators kept accurate records of all messages sent and received via Morse code, but he had other jobs as well. The station master was also the postmaster, so he had to make sure that all of the mail was carefully sorted and delivered. It was delivered once every 6 weeks from the capital cities. He was the only main government representative, so he also had the job of being the magistrate. He was sort of judge and jury in this region. And he sold provisions to any strangers who might pass by. And maybe the most difficult job of all was acting as doctor. If somebody fell sick, it was his job to get information from a doctor in Adelaide via the telegraph and then to try and carry out any emergency procedures that were needed. Another very important person at the telegraph station was the blacksmith, and he worked here in the blacksmith shop with a stone forge and a very hot fire, which could be made even hotter by pumping the leather bellows. In fact, that fire could be made so hot that it made metal soft enough to bend and flatten out. And one of his jobs was to keep the horses well shod. And there were 60 horses here at the Alice Springs telegraph station, because those 4 operators, when they weren't tapping away on the Morse code set, were galloping up and down the line, making sure that everything was in good shape. But this is not the only job that the blacksmith had. He was also responsible for all of the livestock here at the station, and at one stage they had 300 cattle, 200 sheep and a flock of goats, and he had to keep all of the farm equipment and tools in good running order. That included wagon wheels. He was a busy person. This is the powerhouse, another important building at the telegraph station. At one time, the whole floor was covered with batteries. Now, when I say battery, you probably think of something like this: dry cells, which you put in torches and flashlights and electric motor toys. But batteries come in other forms as well. These are batteries. They're wet cells, glass tanks filled with acid with electrodes dipping into the acid. Car batteries today are still something like this. A single one is called a wet cell, connect a whole lot of them together, and you have a battery of wet cells. Now you might say, why on earth would you need the floor covered with these to power a telegraph station? Well, only about a third of them will need to power the telegraph line, another third replacement parts, and another third battery cells being recharged. They were all vital to keep the communication line open. The station master lived in this house together with his wife and children, and they were helped by a full-time cook who prepared all the meals and a governess to look after the children. Now, in addition to the lounge and dining room which you see here, this building also has bedrooms, and in those bedrooms you see the old brass bedsteads and cots which were used in those days. The kitchen and laundry were in quite a separate building. So here at the Alice Springs Telegraph Station, we had the station master and his family, the cook, the governess, the blacksmith, and 4 telegraph operators. A small community of people, pioneers, living in the outback, helping the people in the cities down south to keep in touch with the rest of the world.
I want to know. Curiosity.